The stars were quiet that night when Captain Tejo sat alone on the bridge of his ship. The Horizon was a small vessel, old and tired, but it carried 50 good people through the darkness of space. Tejo loved his ship. He loved his crew even more. Humanity had reached the stars only 80 years ago. They found that the universe was already full. 87 alien species had formed something called the Galactic Assembly. They had rules, laws, and order. They looked at humans and saw children playing with fire. They gave humanity observer status, which meant humans could watch but never speak. They could travel but never settle. They were guests in a house that belonged to others. Tejo did not mind this. He was an explorer, not a politician. He wanted to see new worlds, meet new beings, and learn new things. That was enough for him. On this night, his communications officer, a young woman named Yuna, called out to him. Her voice was strange. It held something he had not heard in a long time. It held hope mixed with fear. "Captain, I am receiving a signal," she said. "It is very weak. It comes from beyond the mapped regions." Tejo walked to her station and looked at the screen. The signal was barely visible, just a small flicker of light in an ocean of darkness. Most captains would ignore it. The assembly had rules about going beyond mapped space. Breaking those rules could end a career, but Tejo was not most captains. "Set a course," he said. "Let us see who is calling." The Horizon turned toward the unknown. It traveled for 3 days through empty space. The crew grew nervous. Lieutenant Wu Jin, the tactical officer, warned Tejo many times. He said they were breaking protocols. He said the assembly would punish them. Tejo listened to every warning and ignored every one. On the 4th day, they found it. The planet was called Velar. It hung in space like a dying ember, its surface covered in fading lights. The sun behind it was old and weak, barely giving warmth. Tejo had seen dying worlds before, but this one was different. This one still had life. "There are people down there," Yuna said softly. "Millions of them." They were called the Rishan. They were beautiful in a strange way, with bodies that glowed softly like fireflies on a summer night. They had wings like moths and voices like wind chimes. They were gentle creatures who had never known war. They had lived on Velor for 10,000 years, building gardens and singing songs and loving their world. Now their world was dying, and no one cared. Tejo took a shuttle down to the surface. Yuna went with him, along with Wu Jin and a small team. They landed in what looked like a great plaza, surrounded by towers that pulsed with fading light. The air was cold and thin. The ground was covered in dead leaves that had once glowed. An old Rishan came to meet them. Her name was Sori, and she was the last elder of her people. Her glow was dim, almost gone, but her eyes were still bright, with something that looked like dignity. "You came," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. "We sent our signal to everyone. No one came."
"Why did you?"
Tejo did not have a good answer. He only knew that he could not ignore a cry for help. He asked Sori to tell him everything. The story she told broke his heart. The Rishan had known for 50 years that their son was dying. They had gone to the Galactic Assembly and begged for help. They asked for ships to carry their people to safety. They asked for technology to save their star. They asked for anything at all. The Assembly had studied their request for 10 years. Then they gave their answer. The Rishian were classified as a non-essential species. Their planet had no valuable resources. Their people had no useful skills. The cost of saving them was too high. The Assembly decided that the Rishan would be allowed to die. They offered only one choice. The Rishan could leave their world and become workers on mining colonies far away. They would dig rocks until they died for masters who did not care about them. Their children would be workers too. Their culture would be forgotten. Their songs would be silenced. The Rishan refused. They chose to die with dignity on their own world, rather than live as slaves on another. "We have been waiting to die," Sori said. "We did not expect anyone to come. We sent the signal only because hope is the last thing we have." Yuna was crying. She did not try to hide her tears. Wu Jin stood very still, his face hard as stone. Teho looked at the dying city around him. He looked at the old elder with her fading light. He looked at the sky where his small ship waited, full of people who had no power and no authority, and no right to be here at all. Then he made a decision. He opened a channel to Earth. His voice was calm and steady, but inside his heart was on fire. "This is Captain Teho of the Horizon. We have found a people worth saving. Their world is dying and no one will help them. I am asking Earth to respond. Send everyone. Send everything. These people will not die alone." He closed the channel and looked at Sori. "I cannot promise anything," he said, "but I can promise this. Whatever happens next, you are not forgotten anymore." The old Rishian reached out and touched his hand. Her glow brightened just a little. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for remembering us." It's far away on a small blue planet called Earth. A message arrived, and humanity began to move. The message from Captain Teho reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday evening, the whole world was talking about the Rishian. Some people said it was not their problem. The universe was big and full of suffering. Humanity had its own troubles. Why should they risk everything for strangers they had never met? But more people said something different. They said that if humanity stood by and watched an innocent people die, then humanity was not worth saving either. They said that being new to the stars did not mean being weak in the heart. Within 1 week, volunteers filled every recruitment center on Earth. Within 1 month, 17 colony ships were ready to fly. For hospital vessels joined them. A full engineering fleet followed behind. These were not warships. Humanity did not send soldiers. They sent doctors and nurses and teachers. They sent farmers and builders and engineers. They sent ordinary people who wanted to do something extraordinary. Admiral Hannah led the fleet. She was a small woman with gray hair and hard eyes. She had served in space for 40 years and had seen many things. But she had never seen anything like this. She had never led a mission of mercy across the stars. Her ship was called the Promise. It was the largest vessel humanity had ever built, and it was full of hope. The journey to Velar took 2 months. During that time, the Galactic Assembly sent many messages. They warned humanity to turn back. They said that interfering with a scheduled extinction event was against the law. They threatened to remove humanity's observer status. They called humans emotional fools who did not understand how the universe worked. Admiral Hannah read every message. She deleted every one. When the fleet arrived at Velar, the Rishian could not believe what they saw. Ships filled the sky like stars come down to visit. Lights blinked in patterns that seemed to say, "We are here. You are not alone." Admiral Hannah took a shuttle down to meet Elder Sori. Captain Teho was there too, along with Dr. Yuna and the rest of his crew. They had stayed on Velor all this time, helping where they could, waiting for help to arrive. Sori looked at the sky full of human ships. Her old body trembled. Her wings, which had not moved in years, lifted just a little. "Why?" she asked Admiral Hannah. "Why would you do this? You risk everything. Your place among the stars, your future, your safety. Why would you risk all of that for us?" Admiral Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. "Because we remember what it feels like when no one comes. A long time ago, on our own world, we went through dark times. Wars that killed millions. Diseases that killed more. There were times when some of our people cried out for help and no one answered. We know that feeling. We know it well." She paused and looked at the dying sun in the sky. "We promised ourselves that if we ever reached the stars, we would never let another people feel that way. We would never stand by while innocents died. That is who we choose to be." Sori began to cry. Her tears glowed softly as they fell. Around her, other Rishian were crying too. They had forgotten what hope felt like. Now it came flooding back like a river breaking through a dam. The work began immediately. Engineer Dasong led the most important project. He was a young man with messy hair and eyes that never stopped moving. He had an idea that everyone said was impossible. He wanted to save the dying sun. "It is not dying," he explained to anyone who would listen. "It is just unstable. If we can anchor it with gravity generators, we can stabilize its core. The sun will live. The planet will live. The Rishon will live. The assembly mocked this plan publicly. They said humans were children playing with forces they could not understand. They said the attempt would fail and kill everyone involved. Daesong did not care what they said. He only cared about the math, and the math said it could work. While Daesun worked on the sun, others worked on the people. Medic Sua led the medical teams. She was a woman with kind hands and a gentle voice. She had treated sick people all her life, but she had never treated aliens before. She learned fast. The Rishion were suffering from radiation sickness. Their bodies, so beautiful and full of light, were slowly going dark. Hua worked with Rishon healers to find new treatments. She stayed awake for days at a time, refusing to rest while others suffered. She also learned their language. She learned their songs. She sat with dying Rishon and held their hands and listened to their stories. She became more than a doctor. She became a friend. Months passed. The work continued. The assembly continued to send threats, each one louder than the last. Finally, they sent an ultimatum. Remove your vessels from Rishon space within 30 days. If you do not comply, we will remove them by force. The message was broadcast across all frequencies. Every species in the galaxy heard it. Everyone waited to see what humanity would do. Admiral Hannah stood on the bridge of the Promise and recorded her response. Her voice was calm and clear. We received your message. Our answer is no. We will not leave these people. We will not abandon them to die. If you want to remove us, you will have to come here and do it yourselves. But know this. We will not go quietly. We will not go isolate. And we will make sure that every species in this galaxy sees exactly who you are and who we are. She paused and looked directly into the camera. You call us emotional? You call us fools. But we call ourselves human. And humans do not let innocent people die alone. The message ended. Across the galaxy, beings of every species watched and wondered. Some thought the humans were brave. Some thought they were mad. On Velar, the Rishon watched too. And for the first time in 50 years, they began to believe that they might live. Elder Sori looked at the sky where the human ships waited. They burned so brightly, she whispered, like stars that refused to die. Beside her, Dr. Yuna smiled. That is what humans do, she said. We burn, especially when someone needs us to. The Galactic Assembly did not make empty threats. On the 31st day, their fleet arrived. 300 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and filled the space round Velar. They were massive and dark and built for one purpose only. They were built to destroy. 3 species led the attack. The Keth were insect-like beings with hard shells and no mercy. The Vorin were reptiles who had conquered 20 worlds before joining the assembly. The Alar were made of living crystal, beautiful and cold and ancient beyond measure. They had come to teach humanity a lesson. They had come to show the galaxy what happened to those who disobeyed. Commander Jin Su stood on the bridge of the Promise beside Admiral Hannah. He was the defense strategist, a quiet man with sad eyes. He had seen battle before. He had lost friends before. He did not want to lose more, but he was ready to fight. We are outnumbered 10 to 1, he said calmly. Our ships are not warships. Most of them are cargo vessels and medical transports. We cannot win this battle through strength. Admiral Hannah nodded. Then we will win it through will. She called for volunteers. She needed pilots willing to fly mining drones and cargo shuttles against warships. She needed people brave enough to face death with nothing but courage and a broken ship. Every single person volunteered. Pilot Mira was the first in line. She was young, barely 25 years old, with short black hair and eyes that never showed fear. She had flown rescue missions in asteroid fields. She had saved crews from dying ships in impossible situations. She was not afraid of the dark. Give me a shuttle and a squad, she said. I will buy you time. Jinsu organized the defense. He placed mining drones in a wide net around Velar. He positioned cargo ships as shields for the hospital vessels. He created a wall of metal and courage between the assembly fleet and the people. They had come to destroy. On the surface below, the Rishian watched and waited. They could not fight. They had never learned how. All they could do was hope that the strange beings who had come to save them would not die trying. The assembly commander sent one final message. Leave now. This is your last chance. If you stay, we will destroy every ship you have. We will drag your survivors back to your little planet in chains. We will make an example of you. Admiral Hannah's response was short. Come and try. The battle began. The Keth ships moved first, swarming like angry insects toward the human line. They expected the humans to run. They expected fear and panic and retreat. They found none of those things. Myra led her squad directly into the swarm. Her shuttle was old and slow, but she flew it like a bird, spinning and diving between enemy ships. She fired her small weapons at their engines, their sensors, their communications arrays. She was a mosquito fighting eagles, and she did not care. Around her, other human pilots did the same. Mining drones crashed into Keith's ships, disabling their shields. Cargo vessels rammed Voron destroyers, sacrificing themselves to protect the hospital ships behind them. It was chaos. It was madness. It was glorious. While the battle raged in space, Ambassador Hyenki made one last attempt at diplomacy. He broadcast a message to the entire galaxy, speaking to every species that was watching. I am speaking now to everyone who can hear me. Look at what is happening. Look at what the Assembly is doing. They sent 300 warships to destroy doctors and farmers. They sent their mightiest fleet to kill people who came only to help. He paused, his voice growing stronger. The Assembly says we are wrong to save the Rishan. They say the Rishan have no value. They say some species deserve to die. Is that what you believe? Is that the galaxy you want to live in? He looked directly into the camera. When your worlds were young and burning, who stood with you? We know who stood with us. No one. That is why we stand here now. Because we remember what it means to be alone. And we refuse to let anyone else feel that way.
Yes.
The message spread across the stars. Millions of beings watched. And slowly, something began to change. In the battle, the human ships were taking heavy damage. The Promise was hit 3 times. 2 hospital vessels were destroyed. Myra's shuttle lost an engine, then another. She kept flying on pure stubbornness, and nothing else then. Just when it seemed the humans would be overwhelmed, new ships arrived. Earth's second fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel behind the assembly forces. 50 more ships, these ones built for war. They had come as fast as they could, pushing their engines beyond all limits. But that was not all. Other ships appeared too. Ships that did not belong to Earth. A small vessel from a species called the Mulvari joined the human line. Then another from the Tennu. Then 5 more from species that had no names. Species that the Assembly had forgotten long ago. They were weak and small and had no power at all, but they came anyway. The Assembly commander hesitated. He had expected an easy victory. He had not expected this. Admiral Hannah saw her chance. All ships, hold the line. Show them what we are made of. The human ships surged forward, not to attack, but to stand. They formed a wall of metal and light between the Assembly and Vialor. And they did not move. The Assembly commander faced a choice. He could continue the attack and slaughter everyone. But the whole galaxy was watching. Every species was seeing who the humans were and who the Assembly was. He ordered his fleet to stop. This is not over, he growled across the communications channel. You have made enemies today. Powerful enemies. Admiral Hannah smiled. We have also made friends. The Assembly fleet turned and left. The battle was over. On the surface of Vilar, the Rishian watched the human ships hold their position in the sky. They saw the small vessels from forgotten species floating beside them. Elder Sori turned to Dr. Yuna, who had stayed with her through the whole battle. Do all humans burn this brightly? She asked why UNA thought about her people. She thought about their history, their wars, their mistakes. She thought about their stubborn refusal to give up, even when everything seemed lost. Only when someone needs us to, she said. Above them, the sky was full of ships that had refused to run. And somewhere in the darkness, a dying sun waited to be saved. 5 years passed after the battle, and everything changed. Engineer Daesung's solar anchors worked. The dying sun of Velor stopped its collapse. It grew stronger day by day, feeding warmth back to the planet below. The sky that had been gray for so long turned blue again. Flowers bloomed. Rivers flowed. The Rishon, who had prepared for death, learned to live again. Their population grew. New children were born, children who had never known the fear of extinction. They played in gardens that glowed with soft light. They sang songs that their parents had thought would be forgotten forever, and they were not alone. After the battle, something remarkable happened. Other species began to reach out. The Mulveri, who had been abandoned by the Assembly 200 years ago, the Tennu, whose world had been stripped of resources and left to rot, the quiet ones of Sector 9. Beings so shy and gentle that no one had ever bothered to learn their real name, they had all been forgotten. They had all been classified as non-essential. They had all been waiting to die. Now they had hope. They asked humanity one simple question. Will you remember us too? The answer was yes. Scholar Nari was a historian from Earth. She was a small woman with thick glasses and a heart bigger than most planets. She began collecting stories. She traveled to dying worlds and forgotten colonies. She sat with elders and children and everyone in between. She listened to their histories, their songs, their grief. She put everything into a document called The Record of Those Who Came. It told the story of humanity's arrival at Velor. It told the story of the battle and the alliance that formed afterward. But more than that, it told the stories of all the forgotten species. It gave them names. It gave them voices. It made sure they would never be forgotten again. The record spread across the galaxy like fire. Beings who had never heard of Earth read it and wept. Beings who had lost hope found it again. The document became the most shared writing in galactic history. Meanwhile, the Rishian and humans grew closer than anyone expected. Captain Borum was the first Rishian trained on human vessels. She was young and curious, with wings that shimmered in the light and a laugh that sounded like bells. She had been a child when the humans first arrived, old enough to remember the fear, but young enough to embrace the future. She commanded a joint ship, called the New Dawn. Her crew was half human and half Rishian. They flew together, worked together, and became family together. Borum carried her people's songs into the void. She taught human crews to sing them during long journeys. She showed them that music could cross any distance and connect any beings. In return, the humans taught her their songs too. Songs of struggle and hope. Songs of loss and love. Songs that proved humans and Rishon were not so different after all. The Galactic Assembly watched all of this with growing fear. They had expected humanity to fail. They had expected the Rishon to die. They had expected the galaxy to forget and move on. Instead, the galaxy was changing. 12 species left the Assembly and formed something new. They called it the Coalition of the Remembered. Humanity was a founding member, but they were not the leaders. The coalition had no single leader. Every species had an equal voice. Every species mattered. Counselor Taman represented humanity in the coalition. He was old now, with white hair and a gentle smile. He'd been a young diplomat when the crisis began. Now he was an elder statesman who had seen the impossible become real. He gave a speech that was broadcast across the stars. He told us we were too young. They said we were too emotional, too primitive, too foolish to understand how the universe works. And you know what? They were right about one thing. We are emotional. He paused and looked at the assembly of species before him. We feel. We care. We remember. When we see suffering, we cannot look away. When we hear cries for help, we cannot cover our ears. Some call this weakness. We call it strength. His voice grew stronger. The old powers built their empire on one idea: They believe that some lives matter and some do not. They believe that the strong should rule and the weak should serve. They believe that compassion is foolish and mercy is waste. He shook his head. We believe something different. We believe that every life has value. We believe that the measure of a civilization is how it treats those who cannot help themselves. We believe that remembering is better than forgetting. He spread his arms wide. Look around you. Look at this coalition. Look at all these species who were told they did not matter. They matter now. They matter because we chose to remember them. And we will keep remembering no matter what. The speech ended. The coalition cheered. And across the galaxy, beings who had felt alone for so long finally felt seen. The assembly did not collapse. It still existed, still held power, still controlled many worlds. But it was no longer the only voice in the galaxy. It no longer decided who lived and who died. A new force had risen. A force built not on fear, but on compassion. A force built not on power, but on memory. Elder Sorry, now very old and very frail, watched the coalition grow from her home on Velor. She had never expected to live this long. She had never expected to see her people thrive again. Dr. Yuna visited her often. They would sit together in the gardens, watching Rishan children play with human children, listening to songs that mixed both languages. You changed everything, Sorry said one day. One small ship with 50 people. You changed the whole galaxy. Yuna shook her head. We just opened a door. Everyone else walked through it. Sorry smiled. Her glow, which had been fading for years, seemed a little brighter. Perhaps, she said. But someone had to open the door first. Someone had to be brave enough to knock. She looked at the sky where ships from a dozen species orbited peacefully. You knocked, she whispered, and the universe answered. Yuna held the old elder's hand and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, more forgotten species waited to be found. More doors waited to be opened, and humanity would keep knocking until every door was open. That was who they were. That was who they chose to be. 20 years had passed since a small ship called the Horizon answered a faint signal in the dark. Captain. Tejo was no longer a captain. He had retired long ago, his hair white and his body tired, but his heart was still strong. And on this day, that heart had brought him back to Lair. The Festival of Remembrance was held once every year. It celebrated the day humanity arrived. But more than that, it celebrated all the forgotten species who had been given a second chance. Ships came from across the galaxy to attend. The sky above Velar was filled with lights of every color. Tejo's shuttle landed in the same plaza where he had first met Elder Sorry, but the plaza looked nothing like it had 20 years ago. The dead leaves were gone. The fading towers now pulsed with vibrant light. Gardens grew everywhere, filled with flowers from 100 different worlds. Rishan children ran through the streets, their wings catching the light, their laughter filling the air. Human children ran with them, playing games that mixed both cultures. Sometimes it was hard to tell who was teaching whom. Tahoe walked slowly through the crowds. People recognized him. They bowed. They reached out to touch his hands. To the Rishan, he was a hero. To the humans, he was a legend. To himself, he was just an old man who had made one good choice a long time ago. He found Elder Sorry in a garden near the Great Hall. She was ancient now, her body thin and fragile, her glow barely visible, but her eyes were still bright. They would always be bright. She smiled when she saw him. You came back, she said. I always said I would. They sat together on a bench made of crystal that hummed softly with warmth. Around them, the festival continued. Music played. People danced. Life celebrated itself. Sorry reached into her robes and pulled out something small. It was a crystal, no bigger than a human thumb, but it glowed with light from the center. The light was warm and golden and alive. This is for you, she said. It holds the light of our restored sun. We made one for everyone who helped save us. But this one is special. This one holds the first light. The light that came back when hope returned. Tejo took the crystal. It was warm in his hand. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. I do not deserve this, he said. Story shook her head. You gave us back our star. But more than that, you gave us back ourselves. You gave us the courage to believe that we mattered. You gave us the strength to live again. She paused, and her voice grew soft. Every child born on this world since that day is alive because of you. Every song we sing, every flower we grow, every dream we dream. All because one human answered a signal when no one else would. Teho felt tears on his cheeks. He did not wipe them away. I just did what was right, he said, as Sori replied. And that is the hardest thing of all. A young Rishon approached them. Her name was Vela, and she had been born 3 years after the rescue. She had never known fear. She had never seen her people starving. She had grown up in a world full of light and hope. She was everything the Rishon could have lost. She was everything they had been given back. Vela looked at Teho with curious eyes. She had heard stories about him all her life, but she had never met him before. You are the one from the stories, she said. The human who came when no one else would. Teho nodded. I am. Vela tilted her head. Why did you come? The stories say you broke many rules. The stories say you risked everything. Why would you do that for strangers? It was the same question Sori had asked him 20 years ago. Teho thought about his answer for a long moment. Then he knelt down so he could look into Vela's glowing eyes. Because someone once told me that the measure of a people is not how they treat the powerful. It is how they treat the forgotten. The ones who have no voice. The ones who have no strength. The ones who can give nothing in return. He smiled at her. We chose to remember. We chose to care. And when we found your people dying alone in the dark, we chose to come. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because it was right. Vela thought about this. Then she smiled, and her wings lifted slightly. Like that answer, she said. So do I, Teho replied. The festival continued into the night. Rishon songs mixed with human voices, lights from both species, danced together in the sky. Ships from the coalition flew overhead in formation, their signals flashing greetings to the world below. Elder Sori watched it all from her bench in the garden. She was tired. She knew she would not see many more festivals. But she was not afraid. She was not sad. She had seen her people saved. She had seen her world reborn. She had seen the galaxy itself begin to change because one species refused to look away from suffering. Dr. Yuna came to sit beside her as the stars came out. It is beautiful, Yuna said. Yes, Sori agreed. It is. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sori spoke again. The assembly still exists. They still hold power. They still believe what they have always believed. Yuna nodded. They do. Do you think they will ever change? Yuna thought about the question. Maybe, maybe not. But it does not matter. Because now there is something else in the galaxy. Something they cannot control. Something that grows stronger every day. What is that? Yuna smiled. Memory, hope, the knowledge that someone will come. The belief that no one has to die alone. She looked at the sky full of ships. That is more powerful than any fleet. That is more lasting than any empire. And that is what we built together. Sari's glow brightened one last time. She reached out and took Yuna's hand. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for remembering us. Far away, on the edge of known space, a faint signal flickered in the darkness. It was weak and desperate and full of fear. A human ship turned toward it. It always did. A century later, the record of those who came was the most translated document in galactic history. The coalition had grown to 200 species, and somewhere in every corner of the universe, beings who had once felt forgotten knew they were not alone. Someone would always come. Someone would always remember. That was the human way. That was the gift they gave to the stars.